Alrighty, let's play a game, huh? Now, keep your eye on the ball. That's okay. It's right here. Don't feel bad. I'm really good at this because of a game that I had as a kid for a relatively forgotten Sega console, Sega Pico. Let's get into it. Okay, I'm just gonna roll with things. I'm just gonna roll with it. The Sega Pico, or Kids Computer Pico if you lived in Japan, was an edutainment video game console released in Japan in 1993, Europe and America in 1994, as well as South Korea in 1995. It was released right around the Mark II Genesis and lasted until a couple years before the end of the Dreamcast, before being replaced by its successor, the Advanced Pico Bina, in 2005. Now, why did Sega make an educational console designed for children around 2 to 8 years old? Well, at the time, Sega was still riding pretty high, and was just beginning to make a lot of the decisions that would lead to their console downfall. Also, this was a relatively new and untapped market. Sure, PCs did have a decent amount of educational games at the time, but they weren't nearly as ubiquitous as they are today. Doom itself had only launched a year prior in America, so it was still a relatively untapped market, and Sega didn't really have a lot of competition. Yet. Also, the Sega Pico was designed to be tough and durable for its target demographic: small children. The system itself is in an interesting clamshell or suitcase-like shape. It has the logo on the front panel, which is different depending on your model and region. The front panel folds down to reveal the touchpad and controls. The back panel that is standing up contains the actual console guts and the cartridge slot, as well as another hidden touchpad. You'll notice this odd shape on the back and the panel near the cartridge slot. This is to accommodate the unique cartridges. But before we get to that, let's hop back to the front panel. We have 4 multicolored buttons, one in each direction. Clockwise from the top, they are white, green, orange, and purple. There's one big red button above these. Then we finally get to the touchpad and magic pen, which actually has a button of its own, resemblant of a mouse click. The touchpad is used for everything from drawing to selecting activities and reading words. The magic pen is also used with the hidden touchpad on the back of the panel to interact with the pages on the cartridge. That's right, pages! The cartridges come in this interesting book format. You slot the cartridge in at an angle and snap it back into place. This is due to the design of the cartridges and for ease of loading them. Not just because kids enjoy that extra level of interactivity, though they do. The title screen opens with the cover page of the book. To start, you simply flip the page. The touchpad does various things in each game, but often selects one of the activities on the page. The buttons also vary throughout, but control a good majority of the activities. So here is my collection of games. Richard Scarry's Huckle and Lowly's Busiest Day Ever, Crayola Create-A-World, Magic Crayons, Disney's The Lion King, Adventures at Pride Rock, The Muppets On the Go, and last and most expensive, Sonic the Hedgehog's Game World. But let's start with Huckle and Lowly's Busiest Day Ever. There's not much to do on the first page. You can get the firemen to put out a fire, and there's one vaguely confusing minigame. it's mostly Huckle pronouncing things for us. Well, they are games for small children. What did you expect? Moving on, in the bakery, there's a good amount of objects to click on, but this time there's 2 activities. The first is a simple game of memory that teaches us about different baked goods. The second is a gingerbread decorating game with little options. The next page only has one minigame, in which you mix paints to get the right color to paint a picture in the background. Other than that, you can paint a couple background objects in the background on this page. Next, we get to the park, where Huckle introduces us to his friends. There's a couple interactive objects and one minigame, which is a game of hide and seek.
On the last page, we have something we're going to see a lot.
Coloring book paint program. Here we have a couple outlines you can fill in, or you can just draw your own picture. There's 10 colors, a fill tool, smaller and larger brushes, as well as an eraser and clear all tools. These pages are usually pretty limited, but they were always one of my favorite features. Crayola Create a World. Before we can even get into it, just listen to that music. This one has some kickin' tunes.
Now, this is the only game that I have the instruction booklet for. And a quick glance at it is probably how I figured this one out so fast, because it's a bit confusing.
The manual also clarifies for me how you would go about saving pictures that you drew with this console. You would have to record it through VHS and from there, capture a frame of it. Today the process is pretty similar with a capture card, though it's a lot easier now. Getting back to the game, the first couple of pages are filled with stamps, little drawings that you can grab and put into your drawing. The stamps are broken up into the screens that share a theme on each page. Exotic Adventures includes jungle, savanna, plains, desert, beach, sea, ocean, port, pole, and space. American Adventures includes farm, ranch, forest, camp, woods, field, lake, backyard, market, and park. City scenes includes airport, clothes, shoes, hats, toys, circus, gas station, restaurant, sports, and town. Every time you load your picture, or any with the stamps on them, it takes a minute as it loads everything one at a time for each shape. On the pre-made ones, it didn't happen, but by the time I was done with my marketing masterpiece, it took a good minute to load everything up. The next page has all the other activities on it. Follow Me is a game in which you attempt to trace the line as the crayon creates it. I say attempt not because you can't,
But because aside from the first time I played it for this video, I just scribbled the pen around like I was 2 and didn't know any better. And it worked great.
Correct Me has you figure out what doesn't belong in the picture. They give you a glimpse of what it should look like beforehand, and it automatically moves to another picture once you're done. Make Me has you reassemble the parts of individual stamps, and finally Spell Me has you put the letters into order to spell a word. As you do, the silhouettes get a little brighter. The last page is another paint program screen. This time, there's more options and more tools, as well as some pretty cool features. You can take the stamps you used earlier and paint on top of them. There's a rectangular tool, a circle tool, swap planes tool, a sponge tool that removes everything that's drawn freehand, and a text tool that adds a text box at the bottom of the screen.
Then there's the good stuff.
There's a tartan button that makes a plaid design based on the line you draw and the spots you click, an XY mirror that splits your cursor into 4 and mimics what you draw on different axes, a separate X mirror and Y mirror that split the cursor on those axes, and that I couldn't access, and the multiplicator, which makes a pretty wicked kaleidoscope effect, taking the mirror thing to the max. There's 15 shades of colors this time, giving you a pretty good selection of shades. One of those brush colors is rainbow. Using this brush and the effects at my disposal, I managed to make some pretty cool trippy stuff.
Magic Crayons. At first I thought this game was related to the Crayola game that I have, but it turns out I just have 2 Sega Pico games about crayons.
Here's my custom start screen that I painstakingly filled in, since you can fill in just about everything on the start page. All of the pages except for the last one are coloring book sections. This is the only one to have a linear story so far. This old guy, who I have no idea what his relation to these kids are, comes in and sucks all of the color out of the room with his magic vacuum. Then he runs off and we get to color in the page. There's no brush tool. Instead, the crayons use a fill tool.
I don't know why, but that's just how it works. There's a decent selection of colors here, as well as some that flash and an interesting amount of designs.
However, this takes away from how many standard colors there are, leaving you with a pretty poor palette, even with 22 colors. After the first page, I just gave up on matching the colors on screen to the ones on the pages of the cartridge, and just filled them in, not giving a damn.
This is when I discovered there are minigames in here.
There's a key hidden on each page that if you click it by clicking the page and not the touchpad, instead of filling it with color, you get taken to a minigame. I can't access the one on the first page as my cursor just won't respond to that area. The second page holds a Tangrams minigame. You know, that game where you make shapes with other shapes? The third page holds a basic monster maker minigame that doesn't hold too many options. The fourth page holds the final minigame and the conclusion of the story. In this game, you keep recoloring food after the old man sucks all of the color out of it so that the animals can't eat it. As the animals eat the fruit when the color is gone, they begin to slowly lose their own color. However, I don't think that there's a fail state here. After a few rounds of this with increasing numbers of fruit, he sucks the color out of everything outside and attempts to drain the kids of their color. The cursor now controls the kids awkwardly, and clicking throws balloons that I assume are filled with paint. Once you win, color is returned, and you even color up the old man's trench coat, making him look like he belongs in Scooby-Doo. The last page is again a paint program. Here we get 10 colors and a couple of outlines to color, as well as the basic tools. No clue on what this camera thing does, but whatever. Disney's The Lion King, Adventures at Pride Rock.
This is one of 2 games that I have the box for, which is why I know that this game and the previous game are both recommended for ages 3 to 7. Crayola Create a World, because I have the instruction manual, I also know the age range for that one, which is 3 to 7 if you were wondering.
This game is filled with minigames and a couple interactive objects. On the first page, we have this minigame where you fly around as Zazu and try not to run into things as well as fly by animals. I found that if you just keep flying down the ground, since you don't crash into it and you can go through rock arcs with no problem, there's not much of a challenge here since you just keep going right. And even if you let go of the controls, you don't really stop, just fly to the right slower. I don't know if this game has in it. I got bored after a bit and just gave up trying to figure out if the minigames had an end state and just flew through them. So, that's what we're gonna do here. This page also has a Simon Says minigame with Cub Simba. The next page is a simple maze game, a game where you hop from letter to letter in alphabetic order, and a puzzle mix-up that took me way too long to figure out for a kid's game. The third page has the same silhouette game from Create a World, a game where you catch falling bugs as Pumbaa, and a basic platformer where you play as Cub Simba, and your goal is simply to get to the right side of the screen. The fourth page has a game where you count the twinkling stars, a game where, as Pumbaa, you click on all the bugs on screen that I think you're supposed to be counting in this game that I couldn't win at all. I figured out how to play, but I kept getting into unwinnable states. Seriously, fuck this minigame. The last page is, you guessed it, yet another paint program. This one has 12 colors and a couple of outlines of the Lion King characters. There are a couple of stamps you can cycle through, a camera inexplicably again, a button to change the background color, and a button to change the music, as well as all the standards. Muppets on the Go. This is definitely one of the best for the system. It has 2 difficulties, as well as a multiplayer of sorts. In each page, the Muppets are visiting a location, and there are a number of minigames to play. On the first page in the city, there are 3 games. One where you simply match up a silhouette with a toy on the train that's going around. One where you fit bricks into the right space to fill a wall and climb up on top of it. And one game where you avoid obstacles such as a mole and a chicken while you try to collect a number of eggs, all while in a large hedge maze. This game gets pretty damn annoying on higher difficulty levels, since you have no health bar, but lose an egg when you bump into obstacles. On the second page in the woods, there's a mini game where you try to keep ants and frogs from taking your food by clicking it after they try to run off with it. There's also a game of Frogger played fittingly with Kermit the Frog, that once you get across 3 times, lowers the bridge. Both of these games get surprisingly difficult in the later stages and on a hard difficulty. The third page sees the Muppets Jeep stuck in the snow. There's only one game on here, and that was kinda confusing timing-wise. It's a game where you ski downhill and have to match a button combination in time, though I can't figure out exactly when to press it or to hold the buttons. The next page sees the Muppets at the beach, where there's 2 activities on this page. One game where you remember the order of sea life washed up on shore, and another which is the cup swap game. On all of these pages you can click on the Jeep and get it to honk, and there are some interactive objects sprinkled throughout. Also, as you complete mini-games, you'll get a scene of Kermit breaking a ribbon winning a race. On 2-player, whoever did better breaks the ribbon. After you beat the last level of a minigame and beat enough of them, you get an ending of sorts.
Surprise! The last page isn't the paint program on this one, and it's the only one in my collection to not have a paint program for the last page.
On this screen, you can place fish that have different patterns of moving around the screen. There are 3 sizes and 3 colors of fish, as well as a jellyfish. You can have the fish swim in a circle, a triangle, a square, an oval, a straight line back and forth, an infinity loop, or a sharp or angled infinity loop. It's kinda like a virtual aquarium. Sadly, you can only have so many fish on screen at one time, and it's not that many. Though it's still a cool feature, and nice to have a little variety on the last page.
Now, the thing you all came for.
Sonic the Hedgehog's Game World. The title screen has a flashy opening, and you get to pick the number of players and difficulty, as well as one of 3 characters.
Since I'm an adult, I'll choose hard. Since he's my favorite, I'll choose Tails. And since I have no friends, I'll choose solo.
On the first page, we have a racing minigame in which all you do is spam the big red button as fast as you can. A game where you climb trees and whack your head on a counter that functions identically. Some kind of skee-ball racing game hybrid in which bigger points move you further. A game in which you launch basketballs at walking basketball hoops, in which 3 was the best I could do.
Well, that was the weirdest thing I've scripted so far.
On the second page, we have a flag game, in which you quickly match the color buttons in order of how they appeared on screen. A finicky, as always, crane game, a good old-fashioned wholesome game of Whack-A-Doctor Robotnik.
Oh, you know I kicked ass in this one. That's right. X.
The third page has a game of memory that you literally have to make no mistakes to get the max prize. That's just crazy, and I barely squeaked by on this one, without trying to get it perfect. Then there's the slot machine fighting game that is nowhere near as fun or exciting as it sounds, that takes way too long to get through one round of.
finally, we have the game that made me what I am at the cup game today as an adult. Alright, I used to beat this on hard as a kid. Let's see how rusty I am. I still got it.
On each of these pages, you can click on the characters in the background and see them say little snippets of dialogue.
Including a very important question. Questions we may never get an answer to. Damn it!
On the fourth page, we can click on all the main characters for a little more dialogue. And if we click on the Sega blimp, we get the credits. This is the final minigame, accessed by clicking on Robotnik. This one is weird, but then so is this whole game, really. In it, you run around each floor of the game and search under every object in the room for emeralds. There are a load of objects to avoid that will spin you out and give Robotnik an advantage. After you collect more emeralds and win, Robotnik proclaims his loss, and you're treated to a credits roll of all the characters in the game. Yeah, the last page is another damn paint program. There's 14 colors, including a rainbow brush and all the basics. You can change the music on this one by clicking the boombox, and you can flip the image as well. Shake it up with a wave effect. There's a selection of stamps from the game you can place, and a new tool, the spray can brush. There's also a Sonic icon that you click on to have one of the character's little sprites follow your cursor around on screen. Maybe this is what the camera button was for in the other games? I doubt it. I doubt I'll ever know. There's a couple outlines of Sonic characters as well to color. There we go. Vomit the Hedgehog. Please don't steal.
Before we talk about my personal connection with the system, let's talk a little bit about what killed the Sega Pico. Other than time, that is.
In 1999, a little thing called Leapfrog hopped onto the scene and was the top-selling toy in the US for 2001 and 2002, as well as the games for it being the top seller the next year. The Pico's successor, the advanced Pico Bina, came out a couple years later in 2005, but it really couldn't put up a fight with Leapfrog, even with the advantage of being first on the scene. Nor did Sega want to after long. After all, this was just before they left the console market for good, and they actually worked with Leapfrog several times, and the Pico was part of what inspired Leapfrog.
Even though the Pico was one of Sega's best-selling consoles, it was also one of its more easily forgotten. And the reason why is pretty clear. All the games for it are for small children, leaving it kind of undesirable to collectors. And in the end, leaving it forgotten, lost to time, and in the memories of people like me. That brings us to my personal connection with this system and with the games. Now, when I was building my collection, I tried to get a lot of the same games that I had when I was a kid, since mine got sold at a yard sale when I was really, really little. And these two actually came with the console when I bought it. And these ones here are all the ones that I had when I was a kid. My favorites as a kid were definitely Sonic the Hedgehog's Game World, The Muppets on the Go, and the Crayola Create-A-World game. I used to play the mini-games in the Sonic game late into the night, laying on the floor with my hands at the controls, just having a blast. Also, I gotta mention that the Magic Crayons game actually had a storyline, and I definitely didn't see that one coming. Moving on to recommendations, it's tough to recommend this in any way. I mean, it's way too out of date if you want to get one for kids. It only plays children's games, so it's not really of any value to collectors. Unless you're a Sega completionist, in which case, here's one you may have forgotten. For me, even though I'll rarely use the thing and the games really aren't any fun to play at this age, it's still nice just to have one back in my collection. Have a little tiny piece of my childhood back. Side note, that Sonic game, it was $75. More than the console and 2 games. Almost more than everything else combined. Thank you guys for tuning in and listening to me ramble about a forgotten Sega console. Well, you know the deal. Like, subscribe, all that shit. And hopefully you learned a little something and were reasonably entertained. Have a great one, everybody.
God damn it! I know! Damn!